What if your next funding round doesn't fall apart because of your traction, but because of your team? In today's episode, I'm joined by a panel of powerhouse women, investors, and operators who backed and built scalable startups across health tech, SaaS, and beyond. We're breaking down the unspoken reality of what ready to scale actually means. It's not just about revenue, it's about readiness. We talk burn multiples and metrics. Yes, and we go deeper. How do you hire the right people early on? How do you lead a team that can execute under pressure? And how do you make your lived experience as a founder your biggest asset, not a liability? If you ever wonder whether your team is your unfair advantage or your hidden risk, this episode is your answer. Welcome to Provider's Edge, the podcast that helps healthcare entrepreneurs and innovators break down barriers and control their business, life, and future with valuable action steps. With me, your host, Sabrina Runbeck, a recovered clinician and a business deal catalyst. Let's rewrite the rules and create a positive social impact while increasing your profitability. Before we dive into today's expert conversation, I want to pause for a minute and talk directly to the innovators in the room, especially if you're preparing for a raise or aim to land a pivotal partnership this year. Your pitch isn't just a story, it's a strategy. And if you're still guessing what investors or decision makers want to hear, you're already behind. That's exactly why we built Pitch to Yes. We don't just critique your pitch, we co-create it with you. You will walk away with a persuasion scorecard and a written pitch that turns attention into action. Apply at pitchtoyes.com. Now let's dive into today's conversation. This is part 2 of our 3-part series from the Funding for Women panel I was invited to speak on alongside of some of the powerhouse female investors, venture partners, and operators. If you missed part 1 from last week, where we broke down the new era of direct investment, how the host and moderator from DFX, as well as all the other women with me, sharing how storytelling and scalable ecosystem are changing how women raise capital. It's linked in the show note, and I highly recommend starting there if you haven't already. Today's episode zooms in how investor expectations have shifted. What makes a founder ready? What actually moves the needle, and why your hiring and retention plan matters more than ever. Let's get into it.
And I think that's why, pitch tanks and any ways that you can really get your reps in, it's a muscle. I definitely didn't have this naturally. Jesse is incredible at pitching. He's got a really organic kind of way of building those relationships. And I've learned a lot from him. And I'm really glad that I have a business partner where we really have, that yin and yang opposite skill sets. And I think when you are at such an early stage, I think don't be afraid if you see someone that you need on your team, on your founding team, to shoot your shot there, because you never know where that journey can take you. Cheetah, what early stage indicators suggest that a company is ready to scale?
I would start with burn multiples, right? So in the past, if you had 2 times, etc., 2.8, 3 times, it was good, it was great. But I think now folks are seeing more of less than 1. So for every $1 of €1 of burn, you're turning it at least into 50 cents. Or $1 of ARR, right? So it's okay, they understand how to convert that. That's really valuable. The other one is your net revenue retention. So your NRR, so if you're looking at SaaS-based companies, etc., are you, keep retaining your revenue over an extended period of time? And is it outpacing customers that are leaving the market or churn, right? So then that proves product market fit, over 100%. And most of the SaaS companies I see that are ready to scale are at above 100%, 104, 118%, etc. And then your month over month like revenue growth, right? So is it greater than a high single digit for 3 straight quarters? Because one could be a fluke, one could be like two could be like a market shift or something like that. But consistent, repeatable, it kind of ties into that consistent, repeatable, like go to market playbook. Um, and in that repeatable playbook, how do you have at least one channel, like where you're going to market with, that has greater than 50-60% of new logo or like new annual recurring revenue, for instance? I'm speaking like in just the SaaS world, but it's true across the board. So do you at least have one single proven channel that gives investors confidence that, yes, I can pour capital into this company because I can predict the output, because that's what there's sustainable way in which, and they're not looking for 3 years or 4 years. I mean, I said 3 quarters. So how can you kind of show and deliver that? And a few of the ladies mentioned this. This is literally where the cookie crumbles, is operational readiness when you scale. And that comes down to people. Do you have the right people around the table to help get you, what got you here won't get you there. Investors are looking around the table as well to that next stage. It's like, okay, how operationally ready is this team to scale to these growths? Because otherwise it all bleeds into the decisions that are made, the good and bad decisions that are made. So those would be some of the key things I would share across, your numbers, like your revenue, like your burn multiple, your NRR, like your net revenue retention, then your repeatable go-to-market, and then finally the team that you have that's able to scale as you scale.
That's why I love you so much, is because you're such a triple thread with your data, your marketing, but also your deal-making side. And I think that's what I appreciate about your mindset so much, is I think marketing sometimes can be very fluffy, and it's like, I love your positioning on that. And I'm actually something that I'm really proud of us at such a low burn rate. I feel like DFX is really operationally ready to scale, and we put so much energy into that in the first 8 months of our company, so that we're really ready to put gasoline on that fire. So I really appreciate that. And Sabrina, I'm curious, what makes a founder story stand out of a really noisy and obviously competitive landscape that we're in right now with all of these different channels?
I think a lot of people mentioned great things. The question isn't just like what you're building, and it's why you're building and why now. There's something that I talk to all founders, is that what I call a sales heat metrics. So that has 5 levels. Is that level 1 is, how do you determine, is there people even recognize their problem? And are we talking to people who are not even conscious about the problem out there? And is, how are people see the problem you're solving is actually has urgency to it? Is that more economic, socioeconomic, changing in landscape, things cannot be taught by us because payers are not covering this, or there's no solution at all, and then there is urgency to do? And also is how you represent trust in you as the company leader. And I know some people don't even want it to be the face of their company, but we always say, if you're the CEO, you cannot skip that. You kind of have to learn how to be liked by the public. And how are people trusting the product? As we mentioned about competitiveness, it's not to put anybody down, but simply you have the extra edge and also the entire reputation of the company. If I'm going to your website, is that going to tell me a very clear story? And anything that you're posting in social blogs, you're speaking on stage, do I get the same story and messaging, almost like you are the hero for our entire community, right? You are the Batman for Gotham. Who is this person that you're representing, and where is your Gotham? And if we're not really clear on those things, and then the last thing I always ask people is, do you think the people that you work with have the wow factor? In the early stages, getting your reps in, whether it's pitch tanks or founder showcase, this is how you sharpen your storytelling muscle. Arkita breaks down the exact investor readiness signals, your burn multiples, net revenue retention, consistent 3-quarter growth, and one proven GTM channel that delivers predictable return. But data alone isn't enough. Investors also look at your team's operational readiness because what got you here won't get you to scale. And when it comes to founder story, I shared my sales heat metrics framework to help you stand out. It's not just what you build, but why now and why you. If your story, website, and pitch aren't saying the same thing, you're leaving trust on the table.
Real quick, if you're a healthcare founder building in women's health, mental health, digital health, age tech, biotech, diagnostics, or longevity, we built Capital Engine for you. We don't just get you in the room, we make sure you're ready to own it. Our team vets the right investors and potential C-suite operators to help you validate products, run pilot trials, or scale your next revenue partner. Some founders get so much investor interest, they've asked us to slow it down. And whether it takes 2 months or 2 years, we stay with you until your raise is closed with expert advisors who've built and exited healthcare companies themselves. Apply now at Capital Engine VC and let's get to work. All right, let's get back to the second half of our show.
That means we don't want to continuously to chase them. We wanted to attract the right people. At the end of the day, we can do so many different things, and we have to resonate emotionally with the buyers that we encounter. And that same goes if they're pitching for investment, right? At the end of the day, they are the buyer. And they're open up the wallet and checks, and they trust it in you. And that means you as a leader. We are still doing business with humans. So how is your team and led by you and your co-founders, your executive team is ready for this? And how you guys be sustainable despite the marketing changes? Right? Those are the things that how we can stand out based on who you speak to and making sure all the messaging and story matches your level 5 buyers and not just people who are not even sure what's going on yet.
100% agreed. There is so much going on in today's world and ecosystem, especially in private capital. And I'm curious from Jennifer's point of view, what underrepresented founder have you invested in recently where they've used that to their superpower in their pitch?
So I think in order to, especially if you've got an underrepresented founder talking to a group of white men, right? How do they overcome that bias, right? And so the first thing I always say is humanize yourself, right? Oftentimes when an entrepreneur, a founder has developed a solution, oftentimes there's a story behind why they felt that was important. I love those stories. I love when my founder has humanized themselves, shared their personal journeys, shared their motivations and experiences, because it just, again, it softens the person you're speaking to a bit. The other thing is just really understanding, try to find commonalities with the folks that you're presenting or pitching to, right? Yes, when you look at me, if I'm talking to a group of, men, you could clearly see my differences. So what I'm going to do is a little bit of research talk, about those folks. Did they work in prime brokerage? I worked in prime brokerage, right? I might weave that into my story, but trying to show where we have the similarities as opposed to ensuring that, as opposed to just being different, right? Show where you're alike. And I think for us, right? And, I know your question was giving you an example of our story, but Gangel's considering that, we understand the plight and how difficult it is for underrepresented founders to get that funding. A lot of times, if we are on the cusp of making an investment, but we see a diverse founding team, that might get us over the line. And by the way, in venture and in entrepreneurship, grit is super important. Women have grit, underrepresented founders have grit. Showcase that grit, because that's what venture capital loves. They want to know who pits the fan, for lack of a better term. Are you going to go in a ball, or are you going to pivot and figure your way out? And so those are just a few of the techniques that or things that I will say to founders as they're pitching to different VCs, and just be your authentic self. If they don't like your authentic self, then trust me, you don't want those dollars anyway. Remember, when you're getting into an agreement with a venture capital, it's like a marriage. You're with them forever. So if you try not to be your authentic self, and then later you can only play that game for so long, it can create more problems later because they feel like they got something different, and you just like you won't enjoy it as much. And if you're not in alignment with your VC partners, that creates problems in the future.
I appreciate your perspective, and it shines through so much of like, I think that's what our relationship got built on so quickly, is that our shared values with Angels and DFX. And I love that, we shared about our, focus on underrepresented founders. And in, 35 minutes, we had such an incredible conversation that we were like, okay, how can we support the founders that aren't a fit for your investment thesis with DFX? And I think it's about, even if an investor is not the right fit for you right now, continue to build that relationship on those milestones, because it doesn't mean that there are no forever one. So I do really appreciate that. And I'd love Akita to jump in on any kind of other things that you would like to mention from the superpowers for underrepresented founders.
Thanks. I was like, my gosh, I want to step into this question because I feel so strongly about this. So I always tell a lot of the underrepresented founders is that, turn underrepresented into unignorable or undeniable. And there's enough data, and you can Google this, you can ask any of your favorite GPTs for this information, but there's enough data to show the value there, right? So I always actually encourage folks is start with an industry or segment stat and then say, hey, we're doing this, right? So our segment is already primed. Diverse teams outperform peers by 33%. Here's how our 500,000 ARR puts us on that path. Boom, you're saying a benchmark and you're hey, we're already doing it. So that's a superpower, right? The other one is pair each of your metric with a life proof point, right? So show your burn multiple or your payback period or whatever right next to the fact that there is a 25% higher ROI for a female founded company. Teams with meaningful diversity make 87% better strategic decisions. Well, this is our founding team, and here are the kind of strategic decisions that we have made that look different. Because this is the reality, is that as you have diverse teams, you're underrepresented, whatever, you've had to build naturally resilience, right? And navigate bias constantly. So you're operating with fewer, warmer intros, and it teaches you to de-risk faster, iterate cheaper, and hear no without losing momentum. So share that. And because those habits will lower execution risks for investors, because you've already shown them that, hey, I can handle a no. I can de-risk very quickly as I navigate this investor landscape right now. So name a past obstacle and then share that experiment that you ran and you overcame and how your results prove that you worked through it, because this is also really valuable and we tend to go on the back foot. And then the last one I would say is one of the beauties of being underrepresented is you see things that others don't even recognize as a problem, right? So it's credibility with overlooked customer segments, for instance. And you unlock markets like Gen Zs, immigrants, whatever, global South consumers, whatever it might be. So map that white space graphically, really communicate here's $4 billion left on the table because all the current tools don't support Spanish language tax forms, whatever it is, right? So really articulate that for them so clearly that it becomes undeniable, and then everything else doesn't matter. So lean into being the only at that table.
Thank you so much. I so agree with you. I think leaning in and seeing it as your competitive advantage and being able to communicate that effectively, I love it. I want to switch gears a little bit into the founder story. As we know, you got to have a lot of grit. You got to have a lot of determination. It is a lonely road. Alice, how can female founders or any founder prepare emotionally for this journey?
Thanks, Ella. Just first, I want to say I really definitely resonate with what you guys are saying, from Jennifer, from you, and from Sabrina and Akita. And I still remember you guys had that LinkedIn post about female founders and an achievement that female can actually do in the capital market. And I'm just kind of proud to be with you guys, in this space and standing in the world and leading and supporting so many businesses. Now let's go into a little bit more like a founder journey side, and how founder can prepare emotionally, and also on the, I think, be more authentic and strategic in the storytelling side. I think when we talk about being authentic as a founder, it doesn't mean just telling your life story unfiltered. It also means staying true to who you are and what you believe in, and also being very thoughtful about how you tell that story. Because as you guys say, at the end of the day, investors are also human beings, and they respond to authenticity. So what really sticks with them is if there's a clear, honest connection between your personal journey, the problem you're solving, and you show them that what you're seeing is not just tracing a trend, but you are deeply invested in solving something that matters to you so much. And in addition, also what you had to do to push through to get there, right? We love to see stories that show grit, resilience, and a deep understanding of the market. I think to be very strategic and also to be a right storyteller, to build that emotional connection, you need to connect the dots between your experience, the business case. So let's say if you have pivoted 3, 4, 5 times to get to your current business model, don't shy away from saying that, right? Talk about how each challenge taught you and how it made your product stronger, how it made you who you are today, and prove that because of that journey, so you are the right person right now to lead this venture. Or maybe because it came from that specific industry that you had over 20, 30 years of experience, share that, explain the insight that you saw that other people didn't, right? Because ultimately it's about building both, I think, emotional connections and your personal confidence. Investors want to believe in you as much as they believe in all the numbers. So show you got the heart and show you got the clarity. That would be my takeaway.
What we're really talking about here is shifting from chasing to attracting the right investors, the right customers, and ultimately the right team. Jennifer highlighted how underrepresented founder can transform biases into superpower by humanizing their story, finding points of connection, and showing grit investors can trust. She reminded us that venture partners are likely marriages. You can't fake authenticity for long without consequences. And I love how this reinforces our core theme. When your metrics, messages, and mindset align, you stop pitching from a deficient state and start leading from undeniable strength. Now, I want to hear from you before we go to the rest of the episode. Tell us in the comment below wherever you're hearing or watching this, or post it on LinkedIn. Make sure to tag me, Sabrina Runbeck. Spelling is like running backwards with the E. What part of your founder story has made the biggest difference in choosing deals or raising capital? In this episode, I sat down with powerhouses leaders who were invited on a DFX panel to unpack what truly paves a founder who is ready to scale. We moved past the fluff pitch tips and dug into the real number investors care about, like burn multiples and net revenue retention. But just as important, your story and your team. When told right, it doesn't just introduce you, it sells you. We explore how underrepresented founders can use their lived experience as leverage, not liability, and how authenticity is not just a brand asset, it's a founder's accelerator. Here are the key points that we discussed today. Number 1, pitching is a skill, not a grit. Founders often think they need to be naturally gifted storytellers. But like any skill, great pitching can be built through reps. Whether you are the visionary or the operator, knowing how to communicate your solution and spark investors' confidence is essential. That's why we host Pitch to Yes workshops. Make sure to register. We have a complimentary spot to look at how you can leverage your story to pitch and get profitable. Number 2, investors look for operational readiness, not just vision. Burn multiples, net revenue retention, and repeatable go-to-market channels are crucial metrics, but they are meaningless without a team that's ready to put in the right work. Vision is only powerful when supported by execution. Number 3, your story isn't just a bio. Is your investor magnet. Founders who connect their personal journey to their business model create instant resonance. The best pitches aren't technical. They're humanized. They show you didn't just build a company. You had to build this company. Number 4, underrepresented, equal, undeniable. Diversified team outperforms. That's not opinion, it's data. Female and underrepresented founders must learn to position their grit, resilience, and insight into underserved markets as their competitive edge, not as a gap to overcome. Number 5, trust is the conversion point. Investors are people. Before they believe in your product, they have to believe in you. If your website, pitch, and social don't align or show emotional clarity, you're missing a core part of what closes the check. That's why the number one thing I do with any founder is a linking audit, overall reputation audit. How are you putting the right words, the right information, the right stories for the right people to see it? And then that is how you can demonstrate authority before the entire product has been built and stand out, even though you might think your competition are endless. Number 6, last but not least, being the only one in the room is your advantage. The best founder don't try to blend in. They highlight the very thing that sets them apart. Culture insights, market perspectives, and intuition others can't see. That's how you unlock untapped white space. This concludes the second part of our 3 mini-series. If you haven't listened to part 1, please go back to last week's episode and make sure to tune in for next week for part 3. Now, I wanted to ask you guys, have you ever turned what made you different into your biggest advantage? Drop me a private message, post on LinkedIn, or comment at wherever you're listening and watching this. Thank you for tuning in to Provider's Edge podcast. We hope you enjoy our latest episode and found the insights and tips helpful. We'd love to hear your feedback on the show and learn what topics you'd like us to cover in the future. So please take a moment to leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform and let us know what you think. Your feedback is essential to help us improve the show and provide you with the content you need to take your healthcare business to the next level. Thank you for your support, and we look forward to hearing from you soon.